sharing those insights. I'd now like to invite the rest of my panelists up onto the stage. I'm delighted to welcome Abraham Voss, Senior Vice President and Head of Financial Services at Telenor Group, Shaibu Haruna, General Manager for Sales and Customer Service at MTN Uganda, Chidi Okpala, Director and Head Airtel Money Africa, Francis Matsaketsa, Mobile Money Executive at Econet Wireless in Zimbabwe, and Joshua Rush, Vice President of Product and Marketing for Vesta. Great, so let's begin. And I'd like to start, if I may, with a few questions for you, Abraham. Telenor Group has over 140 million mobile subscribers worldwide and has a presence in 11 countries, spanning both developed and emerging markets. We know that you have mobile money at some level within most of those markets. So could you tell us, please, why is mobile financial services so important to the Telenor Group?
With that kind of customer base, we're, as a Telenor Group, always looking for growth opportunities, and generically. And we are present in a number of countries with high mobile penetration and low banking penetration. And like the rest of this probably, assumedly, converted group of people, we've identified financial services as a potential area to capture that kind of growth. We believe that we have the assets, we have a type of operation in those countries where we can leverage on and build such a position.
Okay, great, thank you. And what are those? You mentioned the assets that you have in these countries. Could you perhaps tell us a little more about specifically what those assets are that you have within Telenor that makes you well positioned to offer financial services?
Yeah, I like the last wheel, the four-step wheel that you showed. Because I think if you go around that circle, I think there's a number of issues or assets that we have. I think one of the most key issues here is the distribution network we've built up. Roughly, I would say, if you take the whole Telenor Group, I think we have more than 1 million agents. If you take across the whole all of the companies. So it's an enormous network which can be leveraged for expanding these kind of services. In our view, this is not a technology game. It is definitely a game of introducing services and reach out with the value proposition that is valued. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we have an operation in those countries where we've learned to operate in more or less difficult environments, okay. Which I think is important. We do have a mass scale operation from the telco side, so we're used to think in large scale, which is different in some of the banks in those markets, or we can leverage on this type of low cost, high volume mindset. So we have the marketing understanding from the GSM side, which we can then extend, although very different in the financial services, as a lot of the speakers have alluded to. But this is a great starting point for expanding that kind of business.
Great, thank you. So there's some significant assets that you're leveraging for mobile money.
Hopefully it is.
But why is Telenor doing this? Where do you see to be the most significant business case for mobile money? Is it customer loyalty? Is it revenues? Or is it both?
For us, it has been very key thinking is that although a starting point for a telecom company is to extend the existing customer base with new services. That is not the core of this thinking for our financial services. The core of the thinking is that we want to build on this opportunity in itself. That means that EasyPesa, which was exemplified here, the bulk or the majority of those customers are not Telenor GSM customers. So the fundamental starting point is that we definitely believe that this is a business in itself, although of course there is a lot of link to the mobile operation and the opportunities there, but it's a standalone business. And then in addition to that, of course, we work hard with capitalizing also on the GSM side, both on the cost side and also on the value proposition side in terms of how do you bundle it, how you address the customers and all that stuff. But the core of the thinking is that we need to nurture this business on its own sort of merits.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to turn our attention now to Pakistan, if I may. In Pakistan, Telenor has its Easy Paisa service, which was launched in 2009. Easy Paisa processes over 1 million transactions each month. Abraham, Easy Paisa launched with an over-the-counter service whereby agents are performing transactions on behalf of customers. I'm interested to understand why you did this, why you chose to launch with an over-the-counter service rather than enabling customers to have their own individual mobile wallets from day one.
I think it goes back to the starting point that the fundamental starting point was to see what does the consumer experience. And the over-the-counter is very similar to the type of transactions or the type of behavior that they're going through historically. So for us, it's important to understand that it's not about launching a technological opportunity, but using technology to sort of capture or to give opportunities, but based on customer behavior, which is understood. This is a long-term trust conversion game. So in order to do that, you have to embark on that long-term journey, so it was very important to start with what the consumer felt or experienced daily. That's point one. The second point is that you have to build up an ecosystem. So we needed to build up a value proposition for the merchants, so that you step by step could build the brand, the trust, the muscle to actually perform the services. And for that, we needed a business model which also enables the individual agents to make money on that type of service. If you had gone straight to a mobile account, that would have been a totally different business model, and would have been a much different game to build that type of position. So that's and then the third point is that it's also an extension of the cash management function that we have in a mobile operation with such a large distribution network in itself. So it's a natural extension of both transaction bill payments and top up. And the fourth point was then also to make the valid point that we want to build a brand and a trust and a position in a market which is based on a generic offer, not restricted to former Telenor customers. And that's also a part of the issue.
Great. So starting with customer needs, and then it's an incremental step-by-step approach.
Yes.
To get established within a market. Thank you for those insights. And now I'm interested to know, because we know that you're trying to migrate customers from OTC to individual customer mobile wallets at the moment in Pakistan. Keen to hear about some of the lessons you've been learning about that, or perhaps why now is the right time to be doing it.
There's no doubt that as a mobile company, the long-term strategy is definitely to place ourselves with a wallet, with convert the wallet as a natural tool. And that is going to be a part of our long-term struggle that we're doing. And the things that we're working hard on now is to convert and to expand into the mobile accounts. Okay. And the part of that is elements of realizing that is linked to, for instance, the pricing regime. We need to use the pricing tool, of course. It's important to do so. The second element is we need to introduce services which converts the mobile phone not only being a monthly tool, but being a ease of life type of tool. So then you have to have much more rapid type of needs that you can cover with that kind of phones. That obviously is quite different in markets with low smartphone penetration versus high penetration. But still, we believe that's going to be important also in the less mature sort of smartphone markets. Okay. To introduce that kind of services that you cannot get over the counter, but you will get, and you can use the mobile account or
Okay.
the mobile wallet to sort of drive that kind of penetration.
And specifically, what kinds of these services are you thinking about to really get more deeper into the financial lives of your customers?
That could be insurance products, could be saving products, and there can be bundles between the different mobile or the GSM activities and the financial services. It's going to be a number of issues going forward.
Okay, great.
And also a part of that is also it's very important then to learn to educate the consumer, and that is a long-term journey. Not only the less or the less mature market, but also in what we consider to be the more mature market. It's a long way to convert the mobile phone to actively used wallet.
Okay.
And it takes education, it takes training, both from on the merchant network side or those agents that's selling the services, but also directly towards the consumers.
Great. Thank you, Abraham. There are some great insights. I'd like to skip across continents now and pose some questions to Shaibu Haruna on my right here to find out more about MTN Mobile Money in Uganda. MTN Uganda launched MTN Mobile Money in 2009, and today it's one of the world's largest and most successful mobile money services. Shaibu, since launch, MTN Mobile Money offered person-to-person domestic remittances and airtime top-up services. And you've grown a significantly large mobile money service on just those two products. More recently, what other products have you been considering to introduce, or have indeed introduced into the Ugandan market?
Okay, I'll start first of all to say that in MTN, the way we approach our customers is basically to identify the customers' user needs and drive the solutions that meet those needs. And in doing that, what we identified are some key products and services that we believe meets the needs of our customers' daily lives. And one particular product, for instance, is school fees, which allows schools to be able to, parents to be able to pay for school fees for their wards. If you look at a market where about 50% of the populace is actually under the age of 15 years, it tells you the kind of volumes that you're looking at in terms of school fees. We also have significant traction in terms of bulk payments. We have a large social grant system, which is currently being piloted in Uganda, and MTN Mobile Money is providing the engine for delivering these services to very deprived communities, and in most cases, people without handsets, and we're using alternative solution where we're using more like public payphone that support mobile money access. So we're actually not just reaching out to the unbanked, but also for people without access to handsets. And we also have significant traction in the area of bill payments. Bill payments is quite significant. We are connected to the electricity company in Uganda and also water company. And currently, we penetrate about 10% of households who use electricity and water in Uganda. So we've seen some good traction in the area of payments.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. And MTN Uganda has got one of the more mature mobile money services, or certainly that's achieving scale very quickly. What do you think is the right time to be introducing these new kind of services and expanding the product range that you're offering customers?
I think the time is now. I mean, in terms of, because the key thing and the key lesson that we've learned from our mobile money deployment is the fact that the more you have on your platform, the more you have customers sticking to you. And for us, it's a major drive for loyalty, because the moment you interact on a daily basis with customers, and like we heard this morning in most of the interaction, it is not so much about the number of customers you've got or the number of active customers you've got, but the number of transactions that these customers are driving on a daily basis. And the way that you interact with these customers is to meet their day-to-day needs. And that is the way that we are transitioning in terms of the growth of customers, and the way we drive transaction is basically identifying what are their needs and driving towards there. If you look at our market, for instance, we've got, in terms of what our customers are telling us today, is to say For the unbanked, they're looking more around savings products. On their daily lives, people are saving or have targeted saving needs because it's probably 80% of our populace are actually into agriculture. So their income stream is very seasonal. So people are looking for opportunity to save because they are earning income at some point and making school fees payments and hospital payments in the future. They want to save towards these needs in the future. And that is the kind of evolution that we're looking in terms of what kind of products that we can do to enhance their daily lives. And of course, if you look at the high tier customer segments, I mean, NFC is very far off from us if you look at it conceptually, but the reality is that for our high-end, high-tier segment, in terms of the retail arena, there's opportunity for some kind of contactless payment within that space. And it is an area which is of interest for us in terms of our path.
Great. So the future might be closer than we think in certain markets for contactless payments. That's interesting. So the title of this panel is Untapped Markets for Mobile Money. However, in Uganda, I think the market is being quite well tapped at the moment. There is not only MTN Mobile Money, but there are now 4 live mobile money services in your market. Do you see any scope for collaboration between deployments to provide better services to customers?
Definitely. I mean, there is always a need for collaboration within the industry. And I think one of the major areas of collaboration and need for is in the area of the regulatory framework. In most of our markets, the key, challenging element is having a clearly defined regulatory framework for the mobile financial services industry. And it is one area that as operators, we've seen some great progress in terms of our relationship with our regulators, but I think that there's scope to do a lot more because that will be a significant game changer within our markets in terms of how we build collaboration within the industry and work with both the telecoms regulator and the financial services regulators in order to move in the same direction. Because we have ultimately a common aim, which is basically to reach out to the unbanked, and we believe that we have the engine and a platform to drive that.
Okay, so you see a clear opportunity for collaboration on the regulatory side, but how about on the commercial side? Interoperability is one of the buzzwords in this industry. What do you see to be the potential value to customers and to your business through interoperability?
I think fundamentally, I would say so. I mean, it's a buzzword, but we need to look at interoperability from a point of view of what value is going to add to customers and what value is going to add to obviously operators. From a customer point of view, if you look at our markets, I mean, a SIM card in most of the operation basically costs you less than $1 and predominantly a prepaid environment. So for most of our customers and in most of the surveys in our markets, almost more than 50% of customers are actually, multi-SIMing, and with the increasing influx of, multi-SIM handsets, it's more than, very common for people to basically move around. And the very design of our product proposition is such that people are able to, transfer money from their wallet and to non-users. So the question around, we found a workaround the whole concept of interoperating. But most critically for us as MNOs, the question is, what will be in it for us? Should we open up almost immediately? Because the danger about opening up too quickly is the fact that we probably will not be investing too much because the business case of mobile money is still, being looked at very closely. Because in most of our deployments, we're not making money from mobile money, but the intrinsic value of having mobile money deployment is quite great because in terms of loyalty and also in terms of even customer acquisition, because most of the new customers that we're bringing on board onto our network are saying that one of the critical reasons for them joining us is because of mobile money and the power that it offers them. So from a value, from our point of view as MNO, we're quite concerned around moving too quickly because once you move too quickly, the competitive advantage that you have in terms of the large network of agents that you've invested in And it's not just about investing in training, but actually retraining, because the staff turnaround in those outlets is quite huge. And you don't want to take away that from us almost immediately. But
Okay.
definitely there is scope for interoperability. But I think that is a question of the timing.
Okay, thank you, Shaibu. So staying within Africa now, I have a few questions for you, Chidi. Airtel has over 70 million subscribers across its African opcos, and it has launched Airtel Money, I believe, in 14 markets. So you've launched mobile money in 14 markets. What is Airtel's ambition for mobile money in sub-Saharan Africa?
Asima, thank you. We have a huge ambition within the space in Africa. We think that by 2015, we can be the largest provider of financial services in Africa. And the roadmap is very clear to us, which is what we're running with. At the moment, we are at the forefront of massive scale financial inclusion across our markets. And we have a fairly decent coverage of sub-Saharan Africa, the East, Central, West, and to some extent South, because we're in Zambia and Malawi. At the same time, we've also seen an opportunity to drive payments processing for corporates, governments, businesses, different sizes, from small to large, NGOs, and all sorts of institutions. And so the opportunity is there, and we're leveraging our strengths, which includes our network, our brand, and the core infrastructure that we've deployed in all these markets to ensure we achieve this goal that we set for ourselves.
Okay, great, thank you. And Chidi, I know that you used to work in financial services, used to work for a bank, and now you're working for a large telco. So you're somebody who understands very well both sides. I'd love to ask you, what do you see as the unique opportunities that mobile operators have to offer these mobile financial services relative to banks in this space?
Yeah, the first one is the opportunity that is on the table. I mean, in our markets, we have a huge number of people that have cell phones, but very little have bank accounts. I mean, a very good example, which is a classical case, is DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. In DRC, we're the largest telco in that market. We have about 7.5 million subscribers. Total bank accounts in a country with a population size of about 70 million, the total bank accounts is just roughly 1 million. And so you can see the disparity. And so there's a clear-cut opportunity in that market. Secondly, a number of our markets, and DRC in particular again, have very difficult terrain for brick-and-mortar sort of banking. And so, but in all the geographies, we have cell sites. People are talking. And so we can easily leverage the infrastructure that we deploy to extend financial services to those people. The second one has to do with the regulatory framework. We have the same regulators, but at the same time, the conditions for our services is slightly different from the condition for theirs as well. We've managed to work very closely with our regulators to provide the right sort of environment and framework that can enable us drive the financial inclusion objective that we have jointly set for ourselves. And like Shabu mentioned earlier, the call is a joint call, and so we own that mandate for financial inclusion with the regulators. And so it's important that we work very closely with them towards achieving that mandate.
When you say you work very closely, do you engage? What does that mean practically? Are you directly talking to them? How does it work? What's the relationship feel like?
It's all about engagement and then keep the conversation going. I will tell you, between August and May, we're able to roll out our service in 14 countries. There's no way you can achieve that feat without working very closely with regulators. They've been quite supportive. We've been very clear with our aspirations. What has also helped us is the sort of banks that we've also collaborated with in the respective markets, functioning as our trust account holders. And upfront, we recognize that there is need to have a different mindset for this business, which is different from the telco mindset. And so we've been able to resource the business with people from banking industry and from some of the regulators in the respective markets. And that has helped in connecting with the regulators, speaking their language, and also developing the right sort of risk management framework that addresses the concerns that the regulators have.
Okay, thank you. And you talked about DRC there, which is an exciting market, and as we know, you're rolling out in multiple markets. So I'd be keen to understand a little bit more about how you are adapting your strategy for mobile money as you're taking it into new markets. What are some of the variations that you've had to introduce into some of your deployments to suit specific markets?
Sure. I think one of the lessons we learned on the GSM side is that Africa is unique, even though it's one continent, but every country is different. Each country is different. And so you can't paint Africa with one brush. And so we learned that lesson fairly early enough on the GSM side. And so when we started the Airtel Money business, we decided that for each country, we need to look for the core pain point. What is a pain point in that country? And that's what we actually build a business on as an early stage service offering. And so for example, if you look at East Africa, P2P is big, it's huge. But if you take P2P to markets like Burkina Faso or Niger or Chad, you won't make much progress. So if you go to Niger, for example, bill payment is massive. So we've been able to tailor our services in respective markets around the needs of the needs and expectations of the market.
Okay, great. Thank you, TD.
Yeah.
And now over to Zimbabwe and to Francis. EcoCash is now one of the fastest growing deployments in the world today. It has achieved over 1.7 million customer registrations, which is equivalent to 20% of EcoNet's GSM subscriber base in its first year of operations. It's also rolled out a network, quite a significant network of 1,300 agents since it launched. So, Francis, congratulations on such fast growth of your mobile money service.
Thank you so much.
What makes Zimbabwe such a ripe market for mobile money? What are some of the market factors that exist in Zimbabwe that got you excited about the mobile money opportunity?
Yeah, thank you, Sima. Let me start by painting the macroeconomic fundamentals that prevailed in the country over the last decade. Zimbabwe was very unfortunate to go through that patch of macroeconomic stability, which actually affected the way people transacted. Most people lost their monies in the banks because of serious hyperinflation levels. We got to a point where, obviously, even though the majority of the population was largely unbanked, but this was actually exacerbated by the degrading of the macroeconomic situation, to the extent that as we experienced just under 10% of the population, bankable population, that is banked at the moment. And also people lost their confidence in the banking system. So at a macroeconomic level, that already presents an opportunity for the building up of a successful mobile money transfer product. Coupled with that, the proliferation in exponential increase in mobile penetration rates. During the first quarter of this year, we are sitting at around 74% mobile penetration in general in the country, and it's now heading towards the 80%. And that alone, with the level of and the number of unbanked masses, it already created a breeding ground for the mobile network operator to take advantage of that and start to actually look at the informal sector that is also growing so much. in as much as the economy has really made significant strides in terms of on the road path to stability, you then realize that there are so many informal sector that is just grown, and people, it means people are keeping their cash under the pillows. They've lost confidence in the banking sector, and so bringing a mobile money transfer system in the form of EcoCash was really an exciting event, so to speak, and things have really turned around in that regard. So mobile penetration rate, the macroeconomic fundamentals, and also the availability of banking services in remote parts of the country is not as up to scratch, because banking services are available mostly in urban centers. So the population, the demographic distribution is also such that most of the rural, most of the population live in the rural areas where there are no banking services. Yet we are available with the network availability. We are everywhere on top of the mountains. We are there, and you realize that people have got cell phones, even with $20, $30. They can afford to put on even very poor shoes, but they'll be holding a cell phone. So we're tapping into those opportunities.
Okay. Yeah. Some of those things that you mentioned are common factors across other countries where we see mobile money deployments. So this typical high level of mobile penetration, low level of bank penetration. One of the factors that excited me when I was reading about your deployment was in Zimbabwe you have the problem of change, and how that suits itself well for mobile money. Would you tell us a little more about the change problem and how mobile money fits into that?
Thank you. That's a massive one. I think in this room I would wanted to say that it is a unique it was a bad experience, but it's a unique opportunity. Where you seeing that the economy dollarized as a result of the macroeconomic challenge that we had. And definitely not being a local currency, we are using the US dollar and a multi-currency. It's a multi-currency environment, and therefore you have very little denominations as change. The coins are scarce. You don't find the coins, the small denominations, in the retail outlets. And so even in combis, we've just introduced...
What's a combi?
A combi, there are Toyota Hiaces, the most used means of public transport in Zimbabwe.
Okay, like local buses?
From one suburb to the other.
Okay.
Yeah, and even in rural, from urban centers to rural areas as well. So you realize that the lowest denomination in paying the combis is about 50 cents. And so the mobile money comes in there. People are now using the mobile money to pay for their combi fares, using the pay merchant functionality. Yeah. So it's a unique opportunity, and as we talk now, we already have more than 200 combis that have subscribed to this feature, and we've also branded those combis. So in a way, the dollarization, though it actually was a bad experience, we are taking advantage of that as an opportunity.
With mobile money, fantastic. But how has, so it's definitely some unique market factors, interesting market factors in Zimbabwe, but we know that with mobile money, you can't just scatter the seeds and expect it to grow into a great business. So what have you done at EcoNet to make mobile money grow so fast? How have you driven the business so hard in its first year to acquire these huge number of customers and this significant agent footprint, perhaps starting on the customer side?
Yeah, I think from a strategic business strategy point of view, it was a real focus that this was not business as usual. It was a real different business, different from the traditional telecoms business. And so the focus was to incentivize customers. Come register, you get so much of airtime, free, and some free SMSs. But coupled with that, we also incentivize the agents to make sure that as and when they make customer registrations, they get some incentive attached to a quality customer who transacts up to a certain level. Okay. So that was a killer punch. We reached actually close to 1.1 million in the first 6 months. Wow. As a result of that. So uptake was massive. Okay. Those were some of the incentives that we really put on the ground. And so from also a marketing and engagement, community engagement point of view, we went on a 360 kind of degree marketing campaign. And Econet is a very strong brand. It's known in the Zimbabwean market that when Econet unleashes a product, they go full scale. And one of the marketing campaigns that we also used was to brand the combis. Even though then when we launched, the merchant functionality was not there. We went to the extent of just branding the combis to just make the necessary visibility and the noise so that people understand what it is all about relating to EcoCash. So in terms of intensifying the marketing campaigns above the line and below the line, we also had to make sure that since the demographics are such that the majority live in the remote parts of the country, in the rural areas, we used so much of the radio. There are programs that people really are popular with the people, and so would go on even, bring in some kind of promotions and even road shows and making sure that at least we give giveaways like T-shirts, caps, which are written EcoCash, ballpoint pens, and so forth. So all those were really exciting moments for the customer to just get something, some airtime, some free SMS, and experiencing the actual USSD, interactive sessions for the first time. It was amazing.
Fantastic. And that's on the customer side. That's a really, really strong push that you did in your first year. This must have cost a significant amount for Econet in terms of its investment into marketing mobile money. How confident are you that these customers are going to be active customers and actually driving revenues that will enable you to recoup some of that investment? What kind of strategies have you got in place to ensure that customers make that transition from not just registered but active customers?
Thank you, Sima. It was a deliberate decision that we wanted to bring the customers in, log them in, and then started to excite them with more features. So we started very simple, just P2P, airtime top-up, balance inquiry, cash in, cash out, to ensure that the customer get used to. Then the other strategy was to try and make sure that we have a comprehensive roadmap, product development roadmap, where we start to build functionalities like merchant functionality, also a bulk payment, the ability for the customer to receive salary through the EcoCash platform, the ability to pay bills through EcoCash, and so forth and so forth. So by so doing, it made sure that the customer is now able to actually realize not only the basic airtime top-up, the sending money, but also the ability to conveniently pay their bills. I spoke earlier on of the non-availability of banking services in all parts of the country. So one of the key issues that we strategically did was to make sure that we loop in institutions like the post office, which is the largest footprint in the country. It is almost in every rural service center in growth points. And so it means people are able to easily access and load their wallets. So it basically meant that the customer is kept loyal to the brand, to the Econet brand, and are able to actually do everything without really walking into a bank. And also the fact that most people are running away and shunning away from the stringent bank requirements and from the charges associated with actually keeping their savings in the bank. So bringing in quite a comprehensive roadmap, a product development roadmap, entails keeping the customer excited about keeping a little bit of their monies in the wallet and do extra payments because they are available using EcoCash.
Okay, thank you. And you're the first mobile money deployment within Zimbabwe, but unlike Shaibu, has 4 mobile money services in his market. What do you see to be the future of financial services in Zimbabwe? How do you see this industry evolving?
It's really going to be exciting. I think maybe over the next 6 months or so, there is going to be a total change and a total shift of the way people make payments in the country. First and foremost, at first when we launched EcoCash, it was obviously a threat. Coming on board with close to 6 million subscribers, with a robust network infrastructure, obviously the banks were not as happy. It was a serious threat, and there was no way we could announce our strategy as far as a product development is concerned. But we knew very well in our roadmap that we were going to do bank integration. allowing the customer to actually withdraw money through their cell phone from their actual bank account and also transfer from their wallet to their bank account and also do a balance inquiry. So now we've started to engage and open up with the banks as far as the bank to wallet and wallet to bank is concerned. The banks are so excited. Instead of seeing us as a competitor, they've now begun to see us as complementing the efforts. And it actually means it's going to drive away customers from the banking halls. There is no need for the customer to walk in the bank, withdraw cash, go to an agent and load the money on their wallet. So banks are so excited. The few banks that we've started to engage now, they are really high up there and realize that we are here as a mobile network operator to complement their efforts to reach out where they are not able to reach in a less costly manner. So it will be a total shift. Financial services all over available every corner of the country, as long as the network infrastructure continues to live in line with the way we are rolling out EcoCash features.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's an exciting story in Zimbabwe right now. And now we'll take a much longer trip, leaving Africa and heading right across the world to the United States. Thank you, Joshua.
Sure.
Joshua, please can you tell us a little more about Vesta's core business and about the mobile money service that you're planning to launch later this year?
Yeah, so I'm sure there's a bunch of strange looks when people hear of mobile money in the U.S., but there's some interesting facts. I mean, obviously there's a lot of solutions out there that are focused on NFC and primarily the postpaid and the banked customer. I mean, very obviously with the launch of ISIS yesterday and a lot of the other services that are serving that demographic. But there's some interesting facts about the U.S. market. So one is 28% of the U.S. market is either unbanked or underbanked, which equates to about 68 million people in the U.S. And Gavin, I was looking at your slide. I think that would actually put it ahead of Pakistan on your list, just in terms of that segment in the U.S. So it's a very, very sizable part of the U.S. market. And they have very different needs. In fact, listening to a lot of the presentations today, I think a lot of the needs for that group are very similar. There's the need to top up their prepaid phones. There's the need to pay bills. There's the need to do peer-to-peer payments. And that's where Vesta and our company comes in. So we are the largest provider of prepaid top-up infrastructure for wireless operators in the U.S. So about 20% of all prepaid top-ups in the U.S. go through our network, and we work with the likes of AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, operators like that. In terms of your question on mobile money, essentially what we're doing is working with these operators to take the top-up as a foundation, which I think in all of these emerging market implementations is one of the #1 services. Customers are actively doing that today, and so we're expanding the suite of services they can do, leveraging top-up as that first service.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joshua. Still have a few more questions to try and understand this a little bit better.
Sure.
But we know that what's different in the US to some of the other markets that we've heard about is that there is already an established formal financial services infrastructure. There are ATMs on street corners, there are bank branches. It's already there. And whereas in Africa we can see, in other markets we see that mobile's a real leapfrog technology because that isn't all established. It's there in the US. So what evidence do you have? What makes you confident that customers will use these financial services provided by mobile network operators that they're not currently using from the banks that are already out there?
Yeah, so I think you hit on a key point, which is I think we have it a lot easier than some of the other mobile money implementations in that there's certainly the challenge of converting customers that are unbanked or underbanked to these banking services. But once we do, the infrastructure is in place in the U.S. to make it a lot easier for those customers to conduct transactions. So, just as an example, the credit card rails that exist with point-of-sale merchants is all in place today.
Okay.
And so the foundation of our wallet is actually a prepaid debit card with a 16-digit number associated with it. So customers can, once they adopt the wallet, can then go use it in traditional places with traditional merchants. So it certainly is a lower barrier than I think in other markets, but it's an opportunity as well. But there is still the challenge of getting customers to use it. And I think one of the unique things is that working through the prepaid operators, they're in a unique space in the United States because traditionally the unbanked and underbanked have been a pretty hard demographic to reach. And there's surprising overlap with prepaid cell phones in this demographic. So 91% of that group has a cell phone, and actually 57% have a smartphone. And so the prepaid operators are in a natural spot to interact with those customers. And we actually did a survey recently. It was interesting because there's been broad-based surveys in terms of who customers would trust with financial services. And traditionally, the banks and the card networks come out on top. Mobile operators are a little bit further down the list. But within this prepaid demographic and the unbanked and underbanked population, the mobile operator actually bumps up the list a lot higher.
Okay, great. And you mentioned that you're working with, is it all of the MNOs in the US? Or?
We have four of the top
Okay.
operators, yeah.
Great. And what's the financial benefit to MNOs of launching these services?
Well, it's interesting because I think it's pretty consistent with, I think, what we've heard in the panel and what we've heard here at the show today, which is I think it's questionable in terms of the amount of revenue that can be generated through the services themselves. But the play is really around increasing loyalty, decreasing churn with their base. And so I think there's a real feeling where one of the biggest challenges customers have today with their alternatives for financial services is the inconvenience. So these customers are literally going down to a retail location, paying hefty fees to cash a check, paying hefty fees to pay bills. And the opportunity to move that into the mobile device and make it more convenient is a real opportunity to, I think, increase the stickiness of the operator service.
Okay, great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Joshua. There's some interesting developments, not just in the emerging markets, but also in the US for mobile money.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
yep.
So some really fascinating insights from different markets and different deployments. And overall, I think one of our takeaways can be that there's no single right answer for how to be successful in mobile money, but there are certainly some common themes around better understanding customer needs, about having big pushes with marketing, needing a separate business unit, etc. So there are certainly some common themes. Now, I have one final question that I'd like to ask all the panelists. And then I'd invite people from the audience to also pose questions either to the panel or to individuals that are up here with me. So my final question would be, question I'd like to ask is, what has been the most significant lesson that you have learned as an organization about what it takes to be successful in mobile money? This is a relatively young industry. We're all learning along the way. I would invite you each to share your most significant lesson with the audience today. Perhaps I can start. Actually, let me start back over with Gavin, actually, because you've had exposure to lots of deployments through the Fundamo platform. So from what you've seen across different deployments, what's been the most significant lesson that they are learning or have learned?
I think the one thing which is more obvious is the agent incentives. So to ensure that you have a profitable agent network, and through that profitable agent network that they're incented to educate the consumer. And I think that's what's driving correct usage in most of the deployments that we see, is that where the agent is incented to get the consumer to transact, the consumer transacts. So that's important. But there's something that I think I've learned over the past year, Seema, in engaging with I think close to 3 dozen deployments to better understand what we need in order to push this industry to the scale that we wanted to, is that the right resources in the office. So having the right kind of people leading these businesses, people that understand P&L, people that understand financial services, but people that also are able to understand the assets that either a bank or a mobile network operator has and how those assets can be applied in terms of meeting the consumer needs.
Okay, thanks, Gavin. It's interesting. And on to Abraham, if I can ask you the same question. Lessons?
Actually, I think I agree with a lot of what has been said here. The incentive mechanism is obviously important. But I'd like to say that within a larger group, I think it's very important to have the entrepreneurial drive in the organization. That's always a challenge in a big organization. And coming from a very successful, highly integrated, vertically integrated mobile operation, and it's very easy to then look at everything we do on financial services as a value-added services. And that's fine, as you could identify that as a single service, but it might not, or I believe it's not enough to really drive the opportunity to drive that industry. And so to me, that's a learning that if you really want to drive and push forward and transform, be a disruptive force, you cannot have this value-added services thinking. That doesn't take away the fact that we benefit and we work very hard to capitalize on both positions, both in terms of the distribution network and how to interact in the customer interface. But in order to really be the disruptive force, you have to set up a type of operation, in my view, that is dedicated and is not being distorted by a lot of other major short-term priorities. And at least that's the experience inside a larger group, you could say.
Okay. Thanks, Abraham. Who would can throw it back over there to you, Chidi? The most significant lesson that you've learned in Airtel Money.
Okay, for a multi-country operator, one key learning is there's a need for corporate commitment. You need commitment at the highest level. The executives, right from the CEO, even from the board, has to be sold about this opportunity and this business case, and they need to commit to a long-term plan, long-term journey, and even beyond the HQ group level commitment, you also need within the respective opcos, you need ownership of the CEO. So you may still have a mobile money team and perhaps a CEO running the business within the country, but the overall CEO of the opco has to take ownership. Some of the markets where I have recorded, where we've recorded some of the biggest successes are markets where the CEO has shown keen interest and has actually taken ownership of the business.
And what can you do to get that level of commitment? What kind of questions you need to be able to answer for C-level, or what are the questions that they ask you about mobile money?
A couple of things. Number one is, again, engagement. So you build a business case and you spend time with him and demonstrate to him that, look, this business, the financial payoff may not come today, but there are immediate indirect benefits for your business. I mean, for one, it makes your customer base sticky, and at the same time helps you reduce cost in so many other ways. So that's one. The second one is we use case studies. I mean, there are markets where we've had some telcos have demonstrated some success in this business and have actually used it to gain revenue market share. And so you build that case and you get the buy-in, and then you actually build a roadmap and say, okay, look, if we work on this together, this is the kind of results that we will achieve in your own market over the coming months and years. And that has worked in a number of ways.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And perhaps to Uganda, Shaibu, what are the lessons that you've learned?
I think the critical lesson for Uganda is the fact that you need to be innovative around your distribution network. Traditional GSM distribution channels would not deliver for you too much from inception, because they're probably used to a better bottom line position than what mobile money can deliver within the first couple of years of deployment. So you need to think creatively around your distribution network and build sometimes parallel distribution channel in order to get traction and build competition within the distribution network. And like has been alluded to by earlier speakers, the value of incentivizing that distribution network is so enormous, because that is where you can really get traction, and that is a powerful tool for actually educating customers on the use of the product, and you can gain traction from that point.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Francis, in the first year, the most significant lesson?
Yeah, critical lesson really has been internal engagement, the buy-in right up to the top, to the CEO, and also the businesses realize that it's no longer business as usual. It's no longer telecoms business. You are venturing into another territory of financial services territory, particularly also depending on where you're coming from. In our jurisdiction, it's a territory that is regulated by the central bank, and compliance becomes key. So internal engagement across all the critical functions so that there is buy-in and one common goal to achieve this new business, and also engage with the regulator. Insofar as product development roadmap is concerned, clear out what model, what risk management procedures, what AML issues, CFT issues you've put in place. So that's critical in terms of the fact that the regulator may make or break. They may be slow in approving your requirements, so you may not proceed. You may be innovative, but you need to make them your friends.
Okay, make friends with the regulators, thank you. And Joshua, you've not yet launched in the US, but in terms of what lessons you've been looking at, do you look mainly to developed markets or developing markets, or where do you look to find best practices?
Yeah, I think a little of both. I think the biggest thing I'd probably highlight is actually going back to something Abraham said earlier, which is around education for customers. I think that you can build a great product and it can technically be superior, but it's hard to change customers' behavior. And I think it takes a concerted effort to educate customers, to train them and get them using the services. And so we've done some innovative things by tapping into dealer networks and incenting dealers to actually help customers set the wallet up as part of their setup process when they first activate a phone. So it's a critical step in the chain.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So thanks to my panelists for all of my questions. Now I'd like to invite people in the audience if they have any questions for any of the panelists. I believe there are microphones in the room. The hostesses have them. So please do feel free to put up your hand if you have any questions for any of the panelists. I can see a few hands going up. I think there's one just here. If you wouldn't mind introducing who you are when you pose your question.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Fatima Popal. I actually work for Roshan M-Pesa in Afghanistan. Very familiar with the mobile money industry itself. There's one topic that I didn't really hear, and it's the illiteracy rate. Afghanistan being one of the countries that has over 78% illiteracy, how do you deal with educational awareness in mobile banking in your countries?
It's a great question. Who on the panel would like to take that one? Financial literacy. TD, is there something?
I think there are two broad ways, or three. The first one is your agents. The agents are the face of the business. And so you need an agent network that is not just broad in terms of spread, where you need the right quantity, you need the right kind of quality, and you need agents that are well trained, so that they can actually, at points of interaction, they can educate the customers, they can pull them through, they can demonstrate the service, and walk them through on what the benefits will be if they choose to enroll for the service. The second is the corporate, the owner of the business. And so you need to also run your own campaigns to create awareness, to using BTL and ATL initiatives, and to create general awareness and educate the public on your service and what they stand to benefit if they use the service. And the third one, if you ask me, is the regulator. The regulators are very critical in creating awareness. They need to endorse the service. They need to let the public know that this is trusted, this is secure, and they're actually backing this initiative. And one of the recent engagements I've had with a number of regulators is because, again, in a number of our markets, we are not allowed to earn interest on our trust accounts that we have with the banks. And I ask the regulators why, and they tell me because the funds are not ours. And so the bank should not pay us interest. But if we don't earn interest, the bank where the fund is, they earn interest by way of NRFF, Net Revenue from Funds. And so the proposal to the regulators is, can we put these funds in an escrow, maybe for the entire industry, and use that interest to drive awareness, drive education initiatives within the respective, within the markets. And a lot of them have actually started welcoming the idea, and that will help a great deal. It's a capital-intensive business, and so you may not just rely on your revenues to fund those awareness campaigns. You need to rely on your agents. You also need to rely on the support of your regulator.
Right. And Shaibu?
Just to add to the point around the using the agent network, I mean, in some of our markets, what we have done is actually use what we call the foot soldiers as our key ambassador in the market. And these are people who are going out there and prospecting for customers, educating people on the features of the service, and actually encourage them to do their initial trial. Because in most of the studies in our markets, I mean, customers who have transacted at least about 4 times tend to repeat and use the service. So we encourage these foot soldiers to actually demonstrate and actually usher the customers into the service and get them to try the service. And that way, you can have a lot of traction from there.
Great, thank you. As well as questions, I'd also encourage any deployment managers within the room to share with us their insights on mobile money, or perhaps to react to some of the perspectives that we've heard from the panel today. And actually, Fatima, have you still got your microphone with you? Because I know that within Roshan, given financial literacy is an issue in Afghanistan, I was wondering if you'd be willing to share, a couple of the things that you are doing with your M-Pesa service in Afghanistan to tackle this financial literacy issue. It's just coming back to you from the hostess. Thank you.
Well, going back to the comment itself, one of the biggest issues that we do have is illiteracy in Afghanistan, and we do have an IVR service, which is an interactive voice responsive service that we do use for those who can't read and write. So it's an area that we work on, but because of the geographic terrain in Afghanistan and the remote areas, it's quite difficult to reach upon all the people in Afghanistan and get that educational awareness. Also, with regard to the financial industry and the banking system in Afghanistan, as many of you have known, has unfortunately been somewhat corrupt in the past 10 years. So it is a matter of trust. Mobile banking for the people is a trust issue. It's an educational issue. Yes, they keep their money in underneath their mattresses and are afraid to trust not only the banking sectors, the financial sector, but also the telecom companies, because in reality, if you're illiterate and you don't have any educational background, you cannot understand the whole concept of having a wallet on your phone. It doesn't make noise. Where is the money? So that was the question of why and how basically you tackle that battle of educational awareness in certain countries, because Afghanistan, it's huge for that.
Okay, thank you. See another hand here in the front. And again, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, hi, Paresh Rajde, founder of Suvidha. I have a question related to the mobile money operator, and maybe all of you can address. How do you see the revenue streams where it doesn't work from the consumer pays perspective rather than the merchant pays? So the environment like in India, where the consumer doesn't pay and would not like to pay because it's a cash economy and doesn't cost them at all in the transaction actually, and a fairly good, strong banking system already in place. So how do you see the mobile money working there? I may also ask Richie also, because the Airtel money is working very actively there. So you may also answer if you can, and maybe some Telenor also if it is.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not an expert in India here, and we're also in the process of our Indian operations, so we're not on the GSM sides, we're not so actively involved on the mobile money side so far. But coming to your question, if I understood it correctly, it's the dualism, having a banking system and having a cash economy on the same time, right? And I believe actually that's part of what we're. I think that some of the same mechanisms that we also see in Pakistan. I would claim that the starting point is what those groups that use actually use the cash economy. How can you convert? How can you use that as a starting point, and then convert into a mobile position? I think that's absolutely possible, even with an existing banking system. Although I understand that the regulator in India is somewhat challenging, but maybe I'm wrong there. But if that's not the case, then it's definitely a huge opportunity to use exactly the starting point with the cash economy, and to use that as and the physical presence of the different touch point between people and consumers and merchants, and really introduce and use the mobile as a tool to sort of take the next leapfrog into a more mobile economy. I think it's a huge opportunity, given, and I'm not an expert, given that also the regulatory framework allows that. But there you probably are a lot better expert than I am.
Okay. Gavin, would you like to answer that question as well?
Just in terms of what the research that we did told us in terms of the consumer's willingness to pay in cash economies, and looking at different business models in terms of how do we create revenue out of consumers' unwillingness to pay. The research was interesting in that consumers were able to equate value and opportunity cost and what their current cost of transacting is, even though they are unbanked and don't have access to a payment system, and then compare that to the convenience that a mobile money solution would bring. And in all instances, the consumer was willing to pay as long as the price was reasonable and transparent, and that they knew what they were going to be paying. And the key driver behind that was the fact that consumers were quite able to compare their opportunity cost and the inconvenience cost that they currently have in terms of transportation queuing, and then see whether or not the fee added sufficient value to the convenience. So across the board in the research, the consumers were quite happy to pay in all cash economies, quite happy to pay as long as it was a reasonable cost, that it was cheaper than their current means, and that it was transparent. I think that was a key driver, understanding the fees.
Can I add just one thing? I think at the end of the day, it boils down to whether you create value for the actual consumer, and that consumer also perceives or understands that value. I mean, at the end of the day, that's going to be the driver. I think we all agree that there's a huge opportunity linked to using the mobile as an instrument. As long as we believe that, then we will be able to make services, and at the end of the day, that will give that opportunity that you are asking for.
Okay, great. I can see just about a hand just there in the middle.
Hi, Annie Smith with Digicel Pacific. For us, we measure success based on the number of unique users and the diversity of the transaction mix, so different types of transactions happening, not just one sole product. So I'm interested in the learnings or anything any of the operators would share about how you leverage promotions to drive either user adoption or to diversify your transaction mix. Or do you largely rely on the currency which we all create, which is airtime?
Great question, Annie. Thank you. Perhaps Francis, would you be willing to answer that?
Yeah. I think earlier on in my response to Sima's interview, I highlighted the importance of ensuring that the customer, I'll give you an example of what currently prevails in Zimbabwe, where if people, for them to do airtime top-up, they have to buy physical scratch cards, and then scratch and then top up their phones. And so what EcoCash has brought in is the convenience to say at any time, at 12 midnight, apart from staying with those juice cards, they are able to actually transmit airtime top-ups from the EcoCash platform. So you want to make sure that in your product development, there are various features which include the ability to pay bills, the ability to pay merchants, to pay for anything. Any street vending item can be paid from from the mobile money transfer platform. So by so doing, you're actually giving a wider choice to the customer to actually make a choice of of using their mobile phone as a wallet. We call it our pay offline is your phone, your wallet. And what it basically means is that it becomes more of your bank. And in each time you want to do something, there are wider choices of payments you have to make. So it's all about making it a lifestyle. That each time they go in a restaurant, each time they go wherever they are going, each time it's month end, each time they think of paying someone in the remote parts of the country, they do so at ease. So it's more of that, locking in the customer and having wider choices to make payments as opposed to simply doing airtime top-up.
Francis, I think I heard somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, something about a $100 promotion that you were doing for mobile money?
Yeah, sure. Like what we've really introduced, we're calling it in our vernacular a wire promotion, meaning a 100 promotion. What basically it means is you're inviting customers to actually do transactions on using EcoCash and then stand a chance of winning $100, right? And there is also a grand prize eventually after the 3 months, which amounts to $100,000. What it basically means is that you are telling all the 1.7 million customers to actually jostle, and every day there will be 100 people who earn that amount of money. So you are increasing activity in the process, and you are also bringing the education aspect of saying that money, that $100 is not in cash, it's coming to the wallet. We make sure that the winners every day, their wallets are loaded with the $100. So it means the customer will be forced to actually do transactions, and we get revenue from there as well. So if you calculate, the cost and the cost benefit, if you do a cost benefit analysis of that, eventually we are rising in terms of activity ratio and in terms of revenue, in terms of education, all that packaged together.
Great, thanks. And Shaibu, what are you doing in Uganda? Is it mainly airtime promotions, or are you using other means to drive customer usage?
Well, from a Uganda point of view, it's mainly along the lines of airtime promotion. But what is also significant is that even from a business rule point of view, we're beginning to rethink the kind of business rules that we're developing to take care of the specific customer requirements for mobile money, because you're beginning to see a number of customers who are purely using your services for mobile money transaction. And in terms of the way you build your loyalty programs and you strike them in doing other transaction besides, for instance, P2P, for instance. So we're beginning to mine this customer data and beginning to target them with kind of offers in driving activity. So for customers who typically are just using your service for mobile money service, you want to engage them and push a promotion to them to say, if you recharge today, you'll get so much bonus in terms of airtime to make airtime calls. So those kind of relationship we're drawing in from the mobile money platform to drive also the voice and data service.
It's really interesting. Now we're just looking at time. I think we're almost out of time. Okay, yeah, I'm getting the nod from the back. So all that is left for me to say is to say a big thank you to all of my panelists. Thank you for sharing all of those insights. It was a pleasure interviewing you up here, and thank you also to all of you for listening. Thank you very much.